A very good morning to you on this first day of July. It's the first day you can spend your paycheck for many who've gotten paid. Great to be with you. If you've joined us, you are on the fifth connection where we talk through truly the greatest story ever told. We talk through the storyline of the book of Ephesians, and we started in a previous episode mapping out the 7 stops in Ephesus, because Ephesus has 7 letters, not correspondence letters, but alphabet letters in the name Ephesus. So we looked at 7 stops in the backstory, and we met our first characters in Ephesus. They were Apollos and the couple, Priscilla and Aquila. And then we went through and we looked a bit at how the church grew and how Paul comes along and Paul confirms or strengthens the believers. He gives them sterizo. Sounds like steroids, doesn't it? He strengthens them. It's the word, it's the verb, sterizo. He confirms the believers. He strengthens them in the story of the gospel, which has to be embodied, because stories are like that. Stories are alive. They are things that are lived. They're not just things that run around in our heads, but they are things that are lived. They are embodied. And so we're going to be looking at an overview, what I call an eagle's view of the book of Ephesians. You have 6 chapters, 115 verses of storyline. Why this emphasis on story? Because the scriptures unfolds as a story, and story is part of our cognitive mechanics. It's how our mental marbles function in the context of reality. Our minds function according to myths, stories, because stories have a structure. Think of the stories you heard at a grandfather's knee or at your mother or father's knee. And think of that endearing picture of how, as a kid, you'd want to hear the same story over and over and again. We but late starters here. We've only got one grandkid, and our kids are off to late starts in getting married. But be that as it may, we've got a 2-year-old. And the 2-year-old has constantly been saying, the moment she hears the word story, guess what she says? Once upon a time. Once upon a time. Isn't that interesting? Because our lives unfold as a story that is told, a story that is unfolding across the years of our life. It's like sands in the hourglass. So our lives unfold over time. And so let's look at an eagle's view, the broad sweep of the 115 lines of the story, what we call verses. The story wasn't written like that. It was written as a letter where Paul unfolds the galactic aim of God. What was the galactic aim of God? In other words, this assembly, which we call church is an assembly. Assembly is part of a galactic game, part of a galactic aim, because it is, now listen to my words now, the assembly is an amoebic modality. What's an amoebic modality? It's an organism that is alive. And the first time I came across the word amoeba, other than studying about Hydra and amoebas, in matric, standard 9 and standard 10 biology. What I was really fascinated by was the way an amoeba, as a singular celled organism, is able to move. Can lie static and very still for a while, depending on the environment in which it finds itself, the climate in which it operates, the temperature under which it is functioning, and the surface that it's moving over. But it can form a foot. It's called hydra. It can produce a foot that gives it locomotion, gives it mobility. The assembly is an amoebic modality. It's got a shape to it that moves in fidelity to the flow of reality. Now listen, that's already a mouthful and we haven't even started in the text yet. But the broad sweep of the book is about the assembly and how it is an amoebic modality. It has an existence in the world that moves in fidelity, it moves in faithfulness to the flow of reality. Reality has flow to it. All of reality is in flux. It is said that our bodies replenish themselves every 7 years. Every cell in the body replenishes and renews every 7 years, except the neurons in your brain. I guess you'd suffer brain damage. I would have amnesia if that were to happen. But the body renews itself every 7 years from a cellular perspective. We are alive and well, and we are flowing in fidelity to the flow of reality. And where we have trouble is when we are out of sync with the flow of reality. Talked about the group of coming out of the 90s, In Sync. They got their name because one of the boys' moms said, those boys sure sing in sync with each other. And then, of course, there's also a play on the last letter of each one's name in the group, their first names, which spells in sync, N-S-Y-N-C. And so the word that I've chosen tried to capture, and it's impossible for a singular word to do this, but the singular word I've chosen for the book of Ephesians is the word synchronicity. What does it mean to be synchronized? Well, when events and people coincide, when life happens in the lives of people, in their lives and around their lives, we say they have synchronicity. They are moving in sync. The assembly is like that. It moves in sync, and it better move in sync with the flow of reality. That does not mean it becomes worldly. That's not even part of this discussion. It is a live organism. It has a galactic aim. God has an aim for the people of God inside of the cosmos. And we are part of God's cosmic aim. I call it a galactic game. The game of life has to be played according to the flow of reality. Already you would say, oh, well, just slow down, and land the plane. Well, very difficult to land this plane when you get excited and see how God's design and his expectation outcome, his socializing outcome for the assembly, for the people of God, is that they move in fidelity, in faithfulness to the flow of reality. And they are impacting their world maximally. When we look at the series of movies, there are a trilogy of Marvel movies that go under the name Guardians of the Galaxy. I love the title. love the movies as well. But each of the three main movies were part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they followed sort of a team of what has been called a ragtag intergalactic team of heroes. And when the movies came out, they came out first in 2014, then 17, then 23. And each of the movies explores an aspect of this intergalactic ragtag team of heroes, this family, and how they conquer their difficulties and their challenges. Because truly, they were considered to be fictitiously the guardians of the galaxy. Well, God has left a guardian. Call it a gatekeeper, if you will. Word has its limitations, but gatekeeping has not to do with a constitution and idolatry of ideas and ideology, a creed, a confession, a statement of faith. It has to do with real life people who are the guardrails in culture, in the context of community, and they are the guardrails. Can you believe it? They are we are the guardrails. Church is the guardrail. We don't need a charter. The scriptures is what orients us to move in fidelity to the flow of reality. And we're going to talk a lot about what that means. What is the purpose of the scriptures in the life of the assembly as God unfolds his galactic aim in this cosmic game called reality? So that word is synchronicity. You will hear it throughout the series of talks. And so if you are tuned in on one of the platforms, you will be privy to some of the charts that I produce. Of course, you can't put those charts on radio because I don't have a face for radio, that's for sure. But when you look at the chart that I've produced, the 6 chapters invite us to a journey of discovery. It invites the assembly, the ecclesia, to engage in a journey of discovery into the one who embodies identity transformation. Now, who's he? Last time I checked, his name is Jesus. I live in him. I'm to move in him, and in him I have my being. That's Acts 17. Inside of God, his creation lives and moves and has its being. And we are invited by Paul in this story to engage on a journey, because life is a journey and we are to enjoy the ride. If you're not up to the journey and you feel you are in your twilight years and you're reaching for the bench and you are out of breath, and the last thing you want to do is engage on a journey. Well, the last time I checked, it ain't over until, as we say, the fat lady sings. It ain't over until God says it's over. It's a journey of discovery for the assembly into the one who embodies identity transformation by living in fidelity to the flow of reality. That's what these 115 verses of the storyline is about. What that journey looks like, how you engage in it, and how you can enjoy the ride. That's what the people of God are about. That's why they can have a contagious excitement for life and living. And in chapter 1 to chapter 3, the writer is going to talk about patterns of power. What are the patterns of power for engaging in this journey of discovery, this journey of transformation, this journey of living in fidelity to the flow of reality? Well, chapter 1 talks about this journey as a destiny. Chapter 2 talks about this journey gives us capacity, and chapter 3 talks about this entity. This assembly has a modality, it has a shape to it, it's got form, and it's able to move and go with the flow and impact and make its contribution to the flow of reality. So in chapter 1, 2, and 3, we have the patterns for power. And then chapter 4 to chapter 6, we have the prompts for power. Now, the traditional outlining of this book is chapter 1, 2, and 3 is about doctrine, and chapter 4, 5, and 6 is about duty. Well, men and women, it's a lot bigger than that. Doctrine has to do with policies for action. What that life looks like, what the patterns for power are in which we live and through which we are enabled. And then 4, 5, and 6, the prompts for powerful living in the context of what is real. We have living proof of what is real. We are to walk worthy. We are to walk in love, because love gives affordance of choice. Love is personal, voluntary sacrifice in service to others, in serving others. And then you have a third power prompt. Walk in light, because light aligns you with where living is really at. And then we are to navigate with wisdom, walk in wisdom, navigate skillfully. And then the last section of chapter 6 is fight so that all can win. We're going to talk about game B living, not game A, because game A is win-lose. Game B is we win. Church wins. The assembly wins. You're on a winning team. And as we look at this unfolding story, the singular question I want to leave with you this morning is, are you living in fidelity to the flow of reality? Do you know what that is? Do you know what the real world looks like? Or are you living in a dream world? Are you living sort of pie in the sky? You're waiting for Jesus to come. That's it. Instead of understanding that godliness functions for life in the here and now, as well as for the life hereafter. And so to think about that as we start to move into the text in the next episode, I trust that your walk with God this day would be sweet as you start to figure and ponder what it means to live in faithfulness to what life is throwing at you. Yes, throwing at you. Don't sit soak and sour and think like life has thrown you a curveball. That how do you move in fidelity to the flow of what has come into your world? Trust that you'd have a good day as you walk with God. Goodbye for now.